It's September 19th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol's trip to New York for the UN General Assembly. The South Korean leader is now in NYC for his second appearance at the annual UN gathering. He's holding a relay of bilateral summits on the sidelines and a last-minute push for Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. $6 billion of Iranian assets once frozen in South Korea have been returned to Tehran in a swap deal that freed 5 prisoners each from the U.S. and Iran. And global oil prices on Monday hit a new 10-month high, the highest for the year, on tight supply fears amid Saudi Arabia and Russia cuts. President Yoon Suk-yeol is now in New York for the UN General Assembly, with his speech due to come on Wednesday. But his 5-day-long trip already began with something else in mind: Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. Our top office correspondent Kim Jongun is traveling with the president. Hello there, Doyan. How are things there? How is the president's first day in New York going?
Tommy, good evening from Times Square. As always, it's bustling with tourists here, and what they call the Super Bowl of diplomacy, the UN General Assembly, is well underway here in the city, making it even more congested than usual. Now, as you've said, President Yoon is going to be utilizing his stay here in New York to push for Busan's World Expo bid as he sits on the sideline summits with many leaders here, with the vote at the BIE coming in just this November. You can tell he's not going to waste any time, as he went straight into a summit with his Sri Lankan counterpart after landing at John F. Kennedy Airport at 10 a.m. That summit was followed by summits with San Marino, Burundi, the Czech Republic, Denmark, and Montenegro, among others, and can confirm that he met with 8 leaders by 7 p.m. Now, the meetings will have a repeated message requesting support at the BIE, but understanding the broader bilateral context is vital for Yoon during these meetings in order to use the opportunity to broaden South Korea's multilateral diplomacy. For instance, the meeting with San Marino marked the first talks between its leadership and a South Korean president. They discussed enhancing tourism cooperation. Similarly, in the meeting with the Czech Republic, they focused on energy and infrastructure, especially hydrogen energy and trains, areas where the Czech Republic is seeking collaboration with South Korea. Yoon also discussed climate change with countries including Denmark, a long-standing ally since the establishment of the Green Growth Alliance in 2011. Additionally, several countries acknowledge South Korea's significant role in ensuring stability in the Asia-Pacific region through security cooperation.
It does seem like it's going to be a packed week for you as well, Toya. Now, walk us through his schedule in New York, including, of course, the speech at the UN General Assembly.
Right, Tommy. Now, if all goes to plan, Yoon will have met with around 40 leaders for a bilateral summit during his stay here until Friday. That's not to say, as you've mentioned, the only thing in his schedule. Now, take a look at this chart. On Tuesday, he's set to meet with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and will attend a reception hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden. Wednesday is a big day as Yoon will be delivering his speech at the UN General Assembly. He also returns to NYU's Digital Vision Forum on Thursday before wrapping things up here on Friday. Of course, our team here in New York will keep you updated throughout his stay in New York and if there are any updates for his schedule. Dami?
Thank you, Doyan, for that report. We appreciate it. And as President Yoon landed in New York, a former South Korean ambassador to the UN spoke to Arirang News, highlighting why the leaders' push for global peace, development, and digital principles matters for the world. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports from the Big Apple.
South Korea has a crucial role to play in a world that faces continuous threats and challenges that leave the most vulnerable people in society even further behind. That's according to South Korea's former ambassador to the United Nations, Jong-un, who also served as president of the UN Economic and Social Council. Ahead of President Yoon Youngwoos' address to the General Assembly, all raised the urgency of advancing key 2030 agendas, including the Sustainable Development Goals to end extreme poverty and the Paris Climate Agreement on reducing carbon emissions. He says time is running out.
The implementation of the SDGs has been negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know. For example, the global population below the poverty line, which had been going down since the Millennium Development Goals, started to grow again for the first time in 20 years.
Or underscored the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar as an example, having visited the Rohingya refugee camp in Bangladesh last month, which is the world's largest with about 1 million refugees, half of whom are children under 18.
The number of refugees and displaced people in the world keeps growing, with more diverse factors causing their hardship, such as wars, climate crises, and natural disasters.
Or endorses Ho's growing commitment to official development assistance, which will see a 44% increase in next year's budget. He said the beneficiary-turned-donor country can now increase the quality as well as the quantity of its contributions. This includes President Yoon's push to set global standards on digital access, rights, usage and development.
Standardization will also help to enable many developing countries in the world to gain access to the global market and to position themselves on an equal footing with the developed economies. This, I hope, will in turn contribute to bridging the digital divide globally, which is an important target of the United Nations and other international bodies.
Or chairs Save the Children Korea, which has provided tablet PCs and online education to increase access to quality learning, as well as aid for children in conflict-ridden Myanmar and Ukraine. Despite the growing number of common challenges, Or says global cooperation has also suffered setbacks due to reasons that include rising nationalism.
Countries like South Korea should be more active in promoting global cooperation, because as a middle power, we benefit more from a stable and rule-based world based on global governance provided by multilateral institutions. For example, when the war in Ukraine is over, I think there will be a serious debate on the big loopholes we have in the current peacekeeping mechanism. I hope South Korea can play a leading role in such a debate, not least because we will be a member of the Security Council for the next 2 years.
President Yoon on Wednesday will push for Ukraine's peace and reconstruction and outline his plan to address global gaps in development, climate and digital transformation in his vision to make Seoul a more responsible actor in the international community. 오수영, Arirang News, New York.
$6 billion of Iranian assets frozen in South Korea have finally returned to Iran after U.S. sanctions were lifted. There was also a prisoner swap between Washington and Tehran. Lee Seung-ja has more.
After being frozen for more than 4 years, $6 billion in assets sitting in South Korea have been sent to Iran after the U.S. lifted sanctions in exchange for 5 Americans being held in the country. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed that all $6 billion were transferred to Iran's account in a friendly country in the region, and that Iran should have complete access to it to use according to its needs. Citing sources, the Associated Press reported that the frozen assets were transferred to Qatar via Switzerland. Meanwhile, in exchange for the frozen assets being returned to Iran, Tehran released 5 Americans being held in the country. Siamak Namazi, Morad Tabaz, and Imad Shargi, as well as 2 other Americans, had been detained in Iran for nearly a decade on a number of allegations, including espionage. The two other Americans who were not identified had not been in jail, but were not allowed to leave Iran. The exchange of Americans held in Iran was mediated by Qatar, where they were handed over at the airport in Doha. Also part of the deal was the release of 5 Iranians in U.S. prisons. The Iranians were mostly imprisoned for violating U.S. sanctions, but not all of them are expected to return to Iran. U.S. President Joe Biden thanked those who helped to make the swap happen. Issuing a statement upon the release of the 5 Americans, the U.S. president said that he was grateful to the partner countries for their tireless efforts to achieve the goals and thanked the governments of South Korea, Qatar, Oman, and Switzerland. He went on to further thank South Korea for its close coordination and partnership. The $6 billion of Iranian funds had been frozen in 2 South Korean banks when U.S. sanctions were reimposed after former U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from a landmark 2015 nuclear deal with Iran in 2018. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Here on the peninsula, North Korea's Kim Jongun has returned home after wrapping up his Russia trip. The North State media reported on Tuesday, Kim crossed the border at Tumangang railway station in the early hours of Monday morning. It added that Kim further strengthened friendly ties with Vladimir Putin and the government and people of Russia, and said Kim has opened up a new chapter in their bilateral relations. Kim's 6-day visit to Russia was his longest foreign trip since he took power in 2011. And China's top diplomat Wang Yi says relations between Beijing and Moscow are not influenced by any other countries. While holding talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, he stressed strategic cooperation between the two countries and their shared commitment to a more just world order. He also said the two sides have a special responsibility for maintaining global development as leading global powers and permanent members of the UN Security Council. Wang will be in Russia until Thursday, and his 4-day visit comes ahead of a possible landmark summit in Beijing next month between China's Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. South Korea's economy has been showing signs of an easing slowdown. That's how the country's finance minister is evaluating the local economy at the moment. For more, we are joined by Professor Yang Yi-dong this morning. Welcome.
Hello, good morning.
Professor Yang, is that so? Are figures really indicating that the country's economy is showing positive signs?
Yes, we have very solid evidence in numbers that our economy somehow is down. Well, since last February, Korean government has officially used the term economic slowdown, but this term is somehow toned down to it is slowed down since the August. Well, in August, our export has improved somehow. The first 10 days in September, our average export records of semiconductor has recorded the largest amount in this year. And our export of ships and automobiles have reduced by 8.4%, which is the smallest. Smaller than the previous month of July, that has recorded over 16%. And employment has increased over 270,000 people in August, which is even bigger than in the record in July. And also incoming tourists has increased in the first 8 months by 6.5 million people. Well, this record still remains about less than the 60% compared to 2019 before pandemic era, but this number is keep on improving. So we can tell that yes, true, and we have solid evidence that our economic slowdown is down.
So improving chip exports and better job figures are telling that it is showing positive signs, but there are still lingering risks, right? What uncertainties are there?
Yes, well, we should keep in mind that in July, our economic records has been very, very sluggish. We had less internal consumption, investment, export, and all those, the negative impact for the reverse growth were offset by the reduction in import. Mm-hmm. But this trend may remain almost the same because our economic environment has never changed at all. In the United States, in all of the world, the monetary tightening policy is still, going on due to increased interest rate. And the war between Russia and Ukraine is going on that impacts on the increased fluctuation in the prices of raw materials and the food. And also, for the past couple of months, the crude oil has increased over 50%. So we can tell that all this economic environment have never changed in favor, but our company is doing a very good job in doing very best to overcome all this negative economic environments.
Right. There are still global uncertainties like the Ukraine crisis, as well as the rising oil prices are getting in the way. Now, on top of that, yesterday, South Korea announced that it will inject $1.6 billion worth of investment over the next 5 years until 2028 to create these industrial clusters for cutting-edge technologies. Now, what's behind this ambitious level of investment?
Well, already last March of this year, the Korean government announced about 15 national, the high-tech clusters for the areas of semiconductors, display, secondary battery, bio, future cars, and robots. And the largest cluster is located in Yongin near Seoul, involved with the Samsung Electronics business. Well, there are a couple of very interesting issues regarding this government support for this high-tech, the technology cluster. First one is due to very serious constraints, restrictions in the United States, and also trade contention between China and the United States. The Korean government and many Korean firms have recognized that they need to invest in local territory in Korea, like TSMC in Taiwan. So that is a major reason why Korean government has successfully persuaded the large companies such as Samsung and LG to invest their money in the local territory. But the dispute still remains very strong because Yongin, the largest national technology cluster, is located very near to Seoul. And many people are very much concerned that the still heavy investment will focus on Seoul or satellite cities near to Seoul. For example, the semiconductors area, over 90% of investment will be located in the satellite cities of Seoul. So that may cause another imbalance in the overall regional development in this peninsula.
Sure. On top of that, South Korea's finance ministry announced that it has revised down its annual tax revenue estimate to around $257 billion, right? Mainly because of weak corporate earnings and a slump in the property market. Now, how is the country looking to manage so that this reevaluation has a limited impact on the livelihood of the people here in the country?
Well, this era in the tax revenue estimation is not new this year. For the past 3 years, actually this is the third year that has recorded error in the tax revenue estimation. But the major difference in the first 2 years, in the last 3 years of this year, between this year is the first 2 years, we had the excess tax revenue due to very fast recovery from economic slowdown due to a pandemic. But this year, we had very terrible economic performances due to very lackluster export and the reduction and shrinkage of the national asset markets. So corporate tax and capital gain tax were the major factors for the reduction in the tax revenue. Well, the Korean government will replace and substitute this reduction in the tax revenues with the transfer from the foreign tax equalization fund, because the Korean government could sell lots of dollars to keep the Korean exchange rate in a very stable level. But this is a very temporary reaction because Korean government declared that they will not use any more national budget to make up for this reduction in the tax revenue. Well, the impact of this era in tax evaluation, we are supposed to support 40% of national income for local as the local fund subsidy. So reduction in the national income means we have to also reduce our subsidy for the local government. That may impact on less affluent people in very different regions in Korea. So that's a big problem.
All right, Professor Yang Irong, thank you so much for your insight this morning. You have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
As concerns about global crude oil supply disruptions persist, global oil prices continued to rise on Monday, reaching highs for this year. Over the New York Stock Exchange, West Texas Intermediate futures for October hit $91.48 per barrel, its highest price in 2023. Meanwhile, in London, Brent crude oil futures from November delivery also hit a high for the year, closing at $94.43 per barrel. The rise in oil prices comes as positive economic data from China fueled expectations of increased demand for crude from the world's second largest economy. The latest data shows that China's industrial output and retail sales grew more than expected in August, signaling a stabilization of China's economy.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where the global organization has adopted a political declaration that accelerates action to realize its sustainable development goals. Now announced on Monday at a high-level forum, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the ending of hunger, switching to renewable energy, and spreading digitization and education. Now, the SDGs include 17 goals meant to protect the planet and ensure peace and prosperity for all people. But despite the SDGs being adopted in 2015, progress has fallen short of expectations.
Yet today, only 15% of the targets are on track, and many are going in reverse. Instead of leaving no one behind, we risk leaving the SDGs behind. So, Excellencies, the SDGs need a global rescue plan.
Now it's hoped that Monday's declaration will speed up progress in each of the goals. Moving over to Peru now, at least 24 people, including children, have been killed in a bus crash. Over a dozen others were injured. The bus was traveling from Ayacucho to Huancayo on Monday morning when it veered off a highway in the Huacoto region and plunged down a 200-meter deep ravine. Now, authorities say the bus had recently passed a safety inspection and an investigation into the cause of the crash is underway. According to a mayor of a nearby town, the road where the bus crashed was damaged in a landslide last month and has not been repaired. In the United States, the search for a missing F-35 fighter jet has come to an end following the discovery of wreckage. The $80 million aircraft was found in a field north of Charleston, South Carolina on Monday local time. The find comes a day after its pilot ejected because of a mishap during a training mission. The plane was left in autopilot mode and the military lost track of it. Search efforts for the F-35B Lightning II also included a request by the military for civilians to call with any information about the missing plane. Meanwhile, a two-day stand-down for all aviation units has been declared to facilitate a discussion about safety measures and procedures. It will take place this week and apply to all units, both inside and outside the US. And finally, in the United Kingdom, a new record has been set for the world's highest cheese pull. A 4-foot-wide nacho was dipped into a bowl of melted mozzarella cheese before being stretched 49 feet by a helicopter. Now, the stunt took place over the weekend at Cheddar Gorge in Somerset and was verified by the World Talent Organization. The cheese pull was organized by Doritos Dippers to mark National Guacamole Day. It took more than a month of planning. The stunt comes as cheese pull clips have become a viral trend on short video sharing platforms, with some videos getting over 1 million views.
Good morning. Other than much breezier mornings, another sign autumn is here is morning fog. Many southern regions are covered with thick fog this morning, so please drive with care. We're already heading into the end of September with the Chuseok holiday starting next week, but we still need to turn the AC on in the afternoon. Daegu soared to nearly 33 degrees Celsius yesterday, and it will be slightly lower today, but still hovering way above season norms across much of Korea. Upper regions could see light rain passing by, but down south will be under dazzling sunshine with very strong UV rays today. Afternoon highs will be 2 to 3 degrees higher than norms, and Seoul and Daejeon will be topping out at 28 degrees Celsius, for Seoul, Daejeon at 27 degrees. Nationwide rain is in the forecast for tomorrow. Rain will start from central regions at tomorrow dawn before gradually spreading to the rest of the country. Southern provinces and east of Gangwon-do will see rain into Thursday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.